Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, I am going to have to say that it is a very spring-like Oregon today. It is a little cool, sun's out, not raining, birds are chirping. I can see the beginning of buds coming up out of the ground, and there's just a certain feeling, a certain smell, a certain, I don't know. It definitely feels like a turn from winter, and spring seems to be on the horizon here. Hey, it is March, and this episode is dropping on Monday, March 2nd, and in honor of this month, I guess because of a little bit of March madness at the end of the month, I want to do something a little bit different. We are going to follow a theme throughout this month that is revolving around basketball. Now, I usually talk more about football because I've always loved football, back from like literally when I was 4 years old, I can remember. And the thing is, though, basketball was actually the first game that I ever truly loved to play. And I actually wrote an email to my email subscribers a few years ago about the 5 lessons that I learned from basketball and how they apply to changing your relationship with alcohol. And that's really what the genesis of this idea for the whole month came from, because I really liked that idea and I liked the email. So we're going to go throughout this month of March, leading right into March Madness, and focus on not only changing your relationship with alcohol, but getting some lessons from the world of basketball. Let's talk about it. I grew up in Iowa and Cedar Rapids, for those of you that know Iowa. And Iowa has a long and fascinating tradition of women's basketball that actually started long before Title IX. I will link it in the show notes if you want some history on women's basketball in Iowa. And they actually played 6-on-6, which is what I learned on 6-on-6. 3 players stay on offense, 3 players stay on defense. So you don't run the full court. The rules are a little bit different, but the rhythm is essentially the same. And it was strategic in a way that's hard to describe unless you've actually experienced it, but I absolutely loved basketball. And one of the things that you have to understand, especially in 6-on-6, is your position. You had to know where you were allowed to move, where you weren't, and you had to anticipate where the ball was going before it got there. It really wasn't chaotic. It was definitely some sort of choreography. And when I moved later after that, when I was going into 6th grade, we moved to Washington State, and I transitioned to traditional 5-on-5 basketball. My dad actually coached our very first team there in Washington, and we laughed about it for years. I remember he had these, girls, and he wasn't used to coaching girls, I don't think, from his days in coaching football and things when he was a young administrator in the schools. But the girls showed up. One of the girls showed up in Flamellari Get-Theirs. Do you remember what those shoes looked like? They were like school shoes, not tennis shoes, and they had kind of a wavy bottom. She, of course, sprained her ankle during practice, so that was like our very first practice, and we laughed about it for years. But I did end up becoming a pretty good basketball player from even the coaching with my dad. I played varsity as a 7th grader in a 7, 8, 9 junior high, and I was good. In fact, it was kind of one of those trade-offs that I had to make when I decided to become a cheerleader, because I couldn't continue to play basketball and be a cheerleader, at least not on the varsity teams. And so I switched to intramurals, was the intramural champion in our high school. And even so, like I said, and basketball was actually still a really big part of my high school experience, even though I wasn't playing, because as a cheerleader, our boys basketball team went to the state championship. It was a big deal. We were just really good at basketball. So it was fun. And it was, for me, very familiar because like I said, I'd grown up playing. And even now, if you put me out on a court, I can still shoot a reverse layout without thinking about it. I love a good game of horse. And I was always really good at defense. Taught my kids when they were playing basketball all about the joys of being a good defensive player. And that's the thing about basketball, right? It isn't random. When you watch a game, it can look fast and reactive, but underneath that speed, there is structure. There are patterns. There are plays that have been practiced over and over again until they become second nature. The players aren't guessing. They are responding from memory. They know the playbook. They've practiced it. And when you know the playbook, you don't panic. You recognize what's happening and you respond accordingly. That understanding, knowing the play before it unfolds, is what makes someone feel calm and competent on the court. And it's the same thing that makes someone feel calm and competent around alcohol. Yep, told you, we're going to tie it all together. Most people don't think about their drinking as strategic or patterned. It feels spontaneous. It feels emotional. It feels like I just wanted it or it just happened. But if you slow it down, and this is the key, you start to see that your drinking follows a playbook. There is a stress play. There is a boredom play. There might be a celebration play. There is a mark the end of the day play. And you have run these plays so many times that they fire off automatically. And because they feel automatic, you assume that they are inevitable. But automatic is not the same thing as inevitable. Automatic simply means practiced. So let's make this a little more personal. For years, decades really, 6 o'clock in the evening carried a very specific energy for me. Dinner prep would begin. The workday was technically over, but the emotional labor of the day was still definitely very much humming in my system. The kids were moving around the house, coming in and out. There was a lot of noise, and there were decisions that still need to be made, like what are we having for dinner? And somewhere in that environment, my brain would quietly offer a thought. This is the time. A drink would help. It didn't feel dramatic. It didn't feel rebellious. It didn't even feel particularly emotional. It felt just factual, almost neutral, like noting the weather of the day of the week, like I need a drink. But when I slowed it down and really examined what was happening, I realized that I need or this is the time wasn't the whole thought. The deeper thought was something like, I have been on all day. I deserve relief. And that thought created a subtle but powerful shift in my body. It created desire. It created the desire which led to the action of pouring a drink. That was my unwind play. And I ran it thousands of times. Not because I lacked character, not because I am doomed by my genetics, by my alcoholic mother, but because I had practiced that sequence over and over and over again until my brain could execute it without effort. And when I didn't understand that neurological training, I blamed myself. I blamed my own genetics. I believed that I was just weak-willed. But when I started to see it as a neurological pathway, as a play that had been practiced and rehearsed, I started to feel empowered. I started to feel agency in my own ability to change it. Hey, just a quick break to talk with you for a minute about Sunnyside. You hear me talk about it on the show often, and it really is my number one recommendation for a mindful drinking app. People use this tool in my groups, in my classes, and they tell me all the time how much they really appreciate the fact that Sunnyside is a very positive reinforcement. And what I mean by that is that when you track your drinks, and let's just say you planned for one drink and you ended up having two. If you're honest and you track that second drink, you're not going to get a message that shames you in any way or reprimands you. You're actually going to get positive reinforcement for tracking a drink that you didn't plan on, and some ideas and some suggestions for maybe going and grabbing a snack or getting some water. Sunnyside is like having a coach in your pocket, and I love that. You can try it for a 15-day free trial. Go to www.sunnyside.co/Molly to get started today. Your brain is wired for efficiency. It is constantly looking for patterns that can be automated so that it doesn't have to expend extra energy making new decisions. And every time you think this will help, and then you drink, and then you feel even a slight sense of relief or reward, your brain logs that entire sequence as useful. Thoughts create the feelings, feelings drive the actions, and actions produce the result that you have, which is a habit that no longer serves you, but you are stuck in. The more often that loop runs, the stronger the neural pathway becomes. This is what I talk about in the behavior map result cycle: thought, feeling, action, result. It's also reflected in my alcohol core beliefs framework. And it reminds us that new thoughts lead to new feelings, which lead to new actions and new results. But here's the piece that gets skipped a lot of the time. You cannot create new results until you see the old thought. You cannot run a new play until you recognize the old one that you've been defaulting to. And this is why willpower feels so exhausting. You're trying to override a practiced, automated sequence without first identifying it. Imagine a basketball player who keeps getting blocked driving to the basket from the same angle. If they never watch film, if they never analyze their position, they might conclude that they just aren't good enough. But if they study the play, they see the pattern. They adjust their footwork. They change their approach. It's not about effort. It's about awareness. I once worked with a client who insisted that she didn't know why she kept drinking more than she wanted to. She would say, "It just happens. I don't even think about it." But when we slowed it down, we saw something very specific. Her husband would pour a glass of wine, and in that moment, almost imperceptibly, her brain would offer the thought, "If I don't join him, it's weird." That thought created a tiny flicker of disconnection anxiety. And that feeling, or the fear of it, drove her desire. The play wasn't about wine, about really wanting the glass of wine. It was about belonging. And once she saw that, she could question it. She could experiment. She could test whether not pouring actually created disconnection, or whether that was just a story she'd been running for years. Before she understood her playbook, she thought she just had no willpower. After she understood it, she realized that she'd been running an unexamined play. And that is a completely different place to stand. For many of you, especially if you grew up with an alcoholic parent like I did, the playbook started long before you ever picked up your own drink. You watched alcohol being used to cope, to escape, to soften edges, to celebrate, to numb. Even if you consciously rejected it then, your brain absorbed the associations. I used to not understand that because I literally, and that's why I would say I developed an oxymoronic habit, because I so hated the way my mother behaved when she had had too much to drink, but it didn't seem to impact my own decisions around alcohol. When your mind offers you the unwind play or the escape play, it isn't a moral failing. It's just familiarity. Understanding that doesn't excuse the choice or say that it isn't something you want to change, but it should remove the shame, because shame is never a useful tool. I want you to try something with me, all right? Think about the last time you drank more than you intended. Not the worst time, not the most dramatic time, just the most recent. Picture where you were. What time was it? Who was around you? Now, mentally rewind to about 30 seconds before that first sip. What thought was present? Maybe it was, I deserve this. Maybe it was, this will take the edge off. Maybe it was, I don't care. Maybe it was simply, why not? That thought, that quiet sentence in your mind is the beginning of the play. Not the glass, not the bottle, but the thought. When you can identify that thought even once, you are no longer unconscious in the pattern. You are studying your own game film. And this is where change begins. One of the lessons that I shared in my basketball email was this: you won't get better if you don't love practice. When I was younger, I would dribble for hours because I truly liked to dribble basketballs. I'd dribble them between my legs. I'd try to go around my back. I even practiced that dreaded left hand because, I knew I needed to get better with it. There was no scoreboard. There was no audience. It was just me and repetition. But here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. Practice only works once you know what you're practicing. You have been practicing certain thoughts about alcohol for years. Now you're going to practice awareness. And awareness is the first skill. So this week, instead of trying to overhaul your drinking, I want you to study it. When you feel the urge, pause, even briefly, and ask, what just happened? What am I thinking? What feeling am I hoping to create? Don't judge the fact that you had an urge. You're not trying to just restrict yourself and stop yourself from drinking. You're just observing. You are learning your own playbook because you cannot adjust a play that you refuse to see. You are not trying to become someone who never thinks about alcohol. You are becoming someone who understands his or her own mind. Basketball players don't blame the court. They study the game. They learn the patterns. They adjust the play. And that's what we're going to do too. You're not broken. You are simply patterned. And patterns can be revised, but only after they are understood. So, my invitation to you this week is to dive into your game film, to look at your playbook, decide what it is that you've been thinking about alcohol that needs to change, what's driving your desire, and let's practice awareness together. I hope you're going to like this basketball analogy all month long because I've got more coming. And you know what? It's fun for me. When you've been doing a podcast for 5 years, you got to look for some new ways to deliver the same type of message, right? I want the message to be consistent. I want you to hear the same things from me over and over again, but hopefully you hear something today that maybe is just a little bit different, that it's the time, it's when you're ready, and it lights up for you and you hear it and you go, right, I get it. That's what I'm hoping for. So until the end of March, let's talk about basketball. Let's look forward to a little bit of March Madness. And yeah, of course, I'll be playing a bracket. I never win, but it's always fun anyway. And until next time, choose peace, and I will see you on Thursday. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 2 different ways, and you can learn about them over at my website. Go to www.mollywatts.com/workwithme, or reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and decide what might work best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going. If there's one thing I know, it's that change is way easier when you stop trying to do it alone.